Yamaha Motor Canada, none other than Dave Shepard, John Bayless, and Andrew Scott. Andrew, do you want to take it away?
Hi, my name's Andrew Scott, and I'm the Motorcycle ATV and Side-by-Side Technical Coordinator here at Yamaha. Please feel free to type in any questions that you have. We'll answer these right away or at the end of the show. This year our update schools are held as a webinar. This hour you'll spend with us gets you access to the same information in a shorter amount of time, which is very important during the busy spring season.
And this webinar is being recorded. As Andrew said, type in your questions and we'll get them answered to you.
All right, so today's agenda. We will start with a quick overview of the technical update book itself. As in the past, we have compiled a large amount of useful information for you into one easily accessible place. After the book overview, we will proceed to look more in depth at specific portions of the revised and new 2017 models found in the new model information section. We have a lot of information to cover in a short amount of time, so we will get started.
At this point, you should all have a copy of the 2017 Motorcycle Technical Update book at your dealership and hopefully in front of you. The book is broken down into sections, starting with Section 1, which is working with Yamaha, and it includes a page on customer satisfaction, a few pages on the service department who's who, so your contact information on who to contact when questions are for logistics, units, and what our warranty policy is for those units. As well, we explain what the YPP coverage is for motorcycles. We have an example of the PDI checklist which you can order from our stock. And we also list some important bulletins you may wish to reference, including grease, oils, lubes, coolant, brake fluid and its maintenance, as well as alcohol blended fuels.
All right, in Section 2 is your product information and specifications section. It is unchanged from most other years. You can see a list breaking down each individual model. And it covers sort of your general specifications for your engine, your fuel system, suspension, as well as tune-up and maintenance parts.
You'll notice this year we've changed the order from CC to exactly the same order as the sales list. It's a little detail. Thanks.
All right. Now we'll get into the new model information section. These are the units that we are going to cover. A couple YZs, the SCR 950, the new FZ09, the R1, the FZ 10, and the new R6. In your book, this is how you'll see it all laid out. Give a quick overview, but we are not going to cover every page within the book. That would take entirely too much time.
So for recent service bulletins, we've decided, as opposed to listing the bulletins in their entirety or as summaries, we're just going to put you some tables. And so we have 2014 to 2017 motorcycle service bulletins and what model applications so that you can access them in YDS. So we'll look at the table, we list the bulletins on the column on the left, the type of bulletin, the subject, and application. Use the application to access in YDS in order to get those bulletins up on your computer.
All right. Now that we got that over with, we'll move into the new model information. We are going to start off with the YZ250F. A lot of these dirt bikes have been out for some time now, and the new 2018 stuff will be coming out shortly. But we're just going to go through these as a quick refresher to what changes were made for the 2017 model year.
So what do we have here, Andrew?
So this is a quick overview of the changes that were made to the YZ250F. Just going around the bike itself, you can see the air cleaner joint length has been reduced by 15 millimeters to improve the high rev feeling. The throttle joint has been moved 4 millimeters higher for more direct airflow. It used to have rubber on it, and that has been removed to improve fuel vaporization. The exhaust diameter and bending radius has been changed to increase mid to high RPM power output. The shift pedal position has been changed to accommodate a new footrest. The shift cam is changed to improve the shift feeling by adjusting the cam angles in both the in-gear and between the gear shift fork positions. And the transmission received a few changes, mainly on second and third gear, which were widened because these are two gears that are used the most. The internal diameter of the drive axle is smaller, and the amount of oil holes and grooves have been increased for better lubrication and shifting feel. Finally, the clutch push lever was lengthened to change the mounting angle, change the mounting angle. Suspension settings basically change every year. I'm not going to go through that. The engine brackets have been changed from aluminum to about 5 millimeters. The rear brake disc is made with a heat-resistant steel, which is now the same as the front disc, and the rear part of the frame has been widened by 12 millimeters. The connecting rod, the small end, has been tapered and the oil hole has been removed. In 2016, the piston and oil jet nozzle were changed, which allows the oil jet to shoot oil straight at the small end and the wrist pin. The taper has been incorporated to reduce weight, but also allows more lubrication to get into the wrist pin itself, which made the oil hole unnecessary. After the machining process of the engine cases, a heat treatment is applied which increases the durability. This will improve the longevity of the cases themselves, but the cases are otherwise unchanged and would be able to be used on previous 2016 model. Now we'll move on to the YZ450F. Again, going around the bike, the air cleaner top was changed so that those quick fasteners are now recessed. The riders would catch them on their pants and stuff and typically rip them out, so this was changed so that wouldn't happen. The oil drainer has changed slightly at the top for better durability. The rear brake disc, again, now uses more heat-resistant steel material to match the front disc, and the tread pattern has been changed. This is the one big one we wanted to point out, that the oil seal has been revised to increase the rigidity of the seal body. So it is even more important that if you're replacing the seal that it does not go in on an angle.
Now, Andrew, has that part number been changed?
No, the part number hasn't been changed.
So it's usable for 2016 and 17. It's just a new spec for part then, is it not?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now we have the YZ250FX. As has been the case for the last few years, the FX makes similar engine changes following the YZ itself. So you can see that there's been quite a few changes, which again had been previously made on the YZ, and we can go over a few of those a little bit more closely. But also on the chassis, we've had a few changes as well with the adoption of the WR indicator lamps. The front rear suspension settings have been revised. The brake disc has been increased by 10 millimeters, which obviously also means the caliper has changed as well. The engine guard now comes with the unit, whereas it didn't in the previous model. And the rear brake has been changed, so it's the same part as the YZ, the 2017 YZ. And also the frame is 12 millimeters wider like the YZ as well. The crown of the piston has been flattened and the ribs have been added on both sides of the wrist pin. These changes result in a total weight reduction of 7%. Additionally, the replacement duration for the top end has been increased slightly from replace every 5 races to inspect every 5 races and only replace if necessary. So these were the nozzle shape changes that the YZ had on the 2016 model year. Here you can see the oil, where the oil jet shoots more directly to the center of the piston. This is important because the piston shape changes to get around those ribs, but also directs the oil where it's needed the most, right at the wrist pin. So the connecting rod has been changed and is the same part as the 2017 YZ250 with the tapered small end and the removal of the oil hole. On the crankshaft, thrust washers have been added between the connecting rod and the crankshaft for improved durability. These and all crankshaft components are available for purchase individually. The Kickstarter system has been eliminated, which frees up quite a bit of weight. But the kit itself is unchanged and is available as an accessory if the customer would like it. Because the Kickstarter has been removed, there's now an exposed area of the exhaust. So the muffler band has been added just to protect the rider's clothing from contacting the exhaust. The transmission has received a WPC treatment on the second and third wheel gears. These are the most common driving gears, which has happened. For those that don't know, WPC treatment is used to enhance the surface, to reduce friction and strengthen the components. Basically, it's a form of shop cleaning, but made better by Japan. WPC treatment is a process where ultrafine particles are shot at the surface at a very high speed, which permanently increases the surface strength and creates a harder and more durable final product. The FX is a cross-country racing bike. So unlike the closed course YZ, the likelihood of the FX encountering large mud holes is pretty high. An additional scraper has been added to the front forks to improve cleaning performance and reduce seal wear. So we'll move on to the SCR 950.
So what do we have new there, Andrew?
There's a few things new. This bike will be compared quite a bit to the Bolt C-Spec because that is the outgoing model, and these are sort of the same genre of motorcycle, I believe. So as you can see, they have the steel handlebars with crossbars, so it's sort of that off-road look. The same Speedo that was on the C-Spec. You have the front boots over the front forks for that look. The steel front fender, so the knobby-like front tires, wavy front disc, uses the same frame as all the Bolts.
So our customers will get the benefit from the low maintenance belt drive then as well. That's a good.
That's right. That's always a benefit. Like the C-Spec, it has that slim, flat-shaped seat with the addition of those retro-styled side covers. Of course, there's a new frame to accommodate that seat. LED tail lamps, the flasher rear signal location has changed, and a steel rear fender, the rear shock absorbers with a separate reservoir, and the new flameless tank, which is on all the Bolts. The front forks. So they are largely unchanged from the C-Spec, but one thing we wanted to point out is the quantity of oil for each fork is up a little bit. So just keep that in mind if you are rebuilding these forks. Here we have the new FZ09. So the engine is largely unchanged from the previous generation. A common thing that you will see throughout the next few motorcycles is this EU4 regulation. This is a new emissions standard from Europe, and it is one of the highest to reach, and as part of a globalization of all these models, all the motorcycles will adhere to these standards. The new features of this bike is the addition of the assist and slipper clutch, an available quick shift system. The new muffler protector is more for the look. The chain case cover has been redesigned to accommodate that quick shift system. The resonator has been eliminated inside the airbox. The force-fed lubrication type tensioner, and there's a new designed oil cooler.
There's a lot of information there, Andrew. Tell us about it, please.
So as you can see, compared to the previous generation, the weight of the bike is up just a little bit by 5 kilograms, but it is quite a bit different. It's got a new speedometer, new LED headlights, the signal location has been changed, the adjustment is now on the left fork, there's a new speed sensor layout for the ABS, there's a new rad cover, there's a new canister, because again for that EU4 emissions standards, the available quick shift, which is for upshifts only, unlike the R1. There's a new footrest bracket, which incorporates some heel guards. There's a new tail side cover. The drive sprocket surface treatment has changed. The side reflectors have been added. There's that new style mud guard hanging out off the rear swing arm. A new LED tail light design and a new rear frame. For us, on the service side, the important bit is that the YDT version 3 is accommodated and is under the double seat. And there's, again, for that EU4 adaptation, an OBD generic scan tool accommodation.
So this generic scan tool, Andrew, does that mean that any dealer, any shop will be able to work on the FZ09 the same way a Yamaha dealer?
Yes, in some ways. With an available adapter, anybody with a generic ODB scan tool will be able to connect and read what those generic P codes are. The idea is that anything emissions related should be able to be corrected at any shop, but anything proprietary to Yamaha will not show up on with those P codes. They will remain standard code.
Very good. Thank you, Andrew.
So here's the air filter case where you can see the resonators have been removed. They were no longer necessary to meet the emissions regulations. And because the XSR already used this air filter case, they've adopted it. This is the nice change, new force-fed lubrication type tensioner. So whereas before it was sort of a drip type oil fed to the tensioner, the crankcases have been redesigned to accommodate this new tensioner so that oil is force-fed through it and provides constant lubrication. This is actually the same as what is on the FZ7. Just an important note that there is no interchangeability of the tensioner, crankcase, or cylinder head individually with the previous generation FZ09 due to the difference in oil passages. They would all have to get replaced together. Here is a quick overview of the operation of the assist and slipper clutch. As you can see, just so you can see how it works, is the engine torque increases. The pressure on the contact forces the clutch inwards on that ramp, and it provides increased clutch engagement force. But then during deceleration, as that torque is released, the clutch is allowed to slide up the ramp, eliminating that pressure on the plates themselves. while still, keeping a sufficient engagement force. But this also reduces the clutch force by lever force by 20%. Again, the new quick shift system, which is an optional accessory. Just a quick note that it will not operate below 2300 RPM.
Now, I checked for this accessory part number in the consumer website, and I couldn't find anything. Or is Yamaha going to bring it out?
It will be out. That sounds like a bulletin you need to make.
Very good. Thank you, Andrew.
The mudguard. It's a single-sided swing arm mounted mudguard, which incorporates the license plate. It's a new design, so it's a new forged aluminum piece, and it's actually a first for Yamaha. It's just a neat look. Here we have your electrical component location, which is always good for servicing. You can see that everything is fairly localized with your relays, the battery, your fuse box, and the all-important YDT connector. The ECU you can see is on top of the airbox cover itself. The new headlights, new LED headlights. Each side, the inners are your low beams and your outer two are your high beams. And your adjustments you can find at the back side. These are not serviceable units. They would have to be replaced as an assembly.
Well, I had one question for the FZ9. When should the YDT connector be used? It's like a TDI or? Any bike that has YDT moving forward is YDT3 compatible. It should be used during the PDI to set up the bike, just to ensure that there are no history fault codes within the unit, and also to input the VIN number. And so this information that gets stored in the cloud?
It gets stored written to the ECU.
And the history of any bike in version 3 now can be saved on the cloud and then accessed by any other dealer, so that a customer anywhere around the country or elsewhere can have access to the information.
That's right. Once the computer is hooked up to the internet, it is automatically uploaded. That's not something that the dealer has to worry about.
Very good. Good information.
So next we have the R1. There's only a few changes made, mainly being the dash itself. The valve springs has gone from a single to a double valve spring type. The CAT has changed a little bit, and the ECU settings have changed. Here you can see the double valve spring setup. So previously it was cupped and just had a single spring to prevent that side movement. They've eliminated that cup and added that second spring inside. An important note is still use the 2CR type adjusting pads. They are a more highly polished finish, and it's very important that these are used on the R1.
What about the catalyzer?
Again, with that EU4 compliance, the regulations, more catalyzing agent has been put into the exhaust system itself, but the actual exhaust hasn't changed. Front forks are mostly unchanged, but one important change is that they've changed the preload nut. So it's gone from an uncommon 35 millimeter size to a more common 36 millimeter size socket. Suspension control unit. So one of the regulations for EU4 is that error codes are not allowed to be displayed on the dash. All it can do is throw an engine code. So the ECU has been changed to accommodate this. Just more on that the caution displays have been changed. So you can see at the bottom the OBT regulations, the fault code display is prohibited. Therefore, the malfunction information for each device can be indicated only by a symbol or a caution light.
New rules for our market, eh?
That's right. So the FZ10. This guy was an early release, so you definitely had him around a little bit and probably had your hands on him and had a good chance to ride it too, which is always fun. So a lot of this bike is based off the R1S, but also made its own. So you have a lot of LED lighting in your instrument panel, position lights, your headlights, as an electronic steering dampener. The lower crown is its own. LED turn signals, the KYB front forks, the aluminum 5-spoke front wheels based on the R1S, the 4-pot post piston calipers, aluminum front peg brackets, a new sprocket, aluminum rear swing arm, again KYB rear suspension, and that double seat with the hip stopper for the driver, which is a nice comfortable addition. So again, the engine is based largely on the R1, with some changes being new intake valves sort of changed from titanium to steel. The compression ratio has gone down a little bit. The crankshaft has increased inertial mass. Again, to accommodate that, the ACM has been increased. The exhaust pipe material has changed from titanium to steel. The oil pan is aluminum versus magnesium, which is on the R1. The chamber has changed inside the exhaust, a smaller silencer, a new diffuser with X-Up. The crankcase covers are aluminum instead of magnesium, and a larger capacity air cleaner. This bike is designed to be more of a street riding bike versus a track bike, which is the big part of these changes. The new cross-plane crankshaft is based on the R1. It has a thicker taper on the end to accommodate the increased weight of the rotor assembly, the ACM. And the idea again is for more improved streetability of the bike, so it doesn't fall in RPM quite as quickly when you're in traffic. It features a steel connecting rod with a fracture split big end, but the cap tightening bolt procedure has not changed. It has new forged aluminum pistons, new piston crown design, and also the piston pin circlip has been reduced, so you do not need to use that R1 special tool to install it. The engine oil is definitely the same recommendation as the R1, using the Yamalube full synthetic. And there's your oil filter part number, the 5GH50. The air filter, it's a new air filter case with the viscous type air filter, which is a common part with the R1. The FZ does not have YCCI, which helps reduce weight and production cost. The airbox capacity is up a little bit more than the R1, and it mainly is to help achieve a more linear feel while riding through acceleration and deceleration, because again, this is a street use bike versus a track bike. The note is that you want to replace this air filter every 40,000 kilometers or sooner if you ride in very dusty areas. So naturally the settings are different from the R1, but they are a similar fork setup. There's a new steel fuel tank with a large 17-liter capacity, and there's a reserve warning light that comes on at 4 liters. The headlights are those LEDs, which are based off the R1. So your low beam, as you can see, is on the left side, and the high beam is both. Your adjusters are on the back, and these are not serviceable items. They have to be replaced as an assembly if one goes wrong. So your left handlebar switch is based off the FJR because of the accommodation of the cruise control. The cruise control can be set between 4th and 6th gear while riding at least 50 kilometers or over. And it uses the YCCT to control the fueling to maintain the speed. Here's the electrical parts location. It's largely in the center of the bike. The HU is your hydraulic unit. Next we have the D-mode differences between the FZ. As we know, the FZ, if you have your standard mode, you can switch it to B mode, which is more like a rain mode, it's less sharp, up to your A mode, which is your sportier version. On the FZ10, standard is your lower of the settings, and then A is sportier, and B being the sportiest. This is more in line with the R1 power levels in your D mode. Again, your YDT tool connector is located under the double seat. It uses that CAN communication, which is very important to allow multiple ECUs to communicate at a very fast pace. And there's also the active test, which is available in the YDT version 3. Next we have the R6. As you can see, the engine is largely unchanged. When you have a good thing, you don't want to change it. So we've expanded the AIS ports. There's a newly designed smaller ACM and the addition of a gear position sensor. Of course, on the outside, there's quite a few changes. You have your R1 based forks, R1 type rear view mirrors with the integrated signals. You have that new LED headlight, just like the R1, except tucked back a little bit more. The new auxiliary lights, the new front brake system, which is based on the R1, again the R1S type front wheel and rear wheel. ABS is added. Quick shift is available as an accessory. We have the rear sensor at the back, a newly designed rear shock absorber, the R1 type signals in the rear, a newly designed ECU, traction control, and D modes, R1 style taillight, new designed rear fender with those flow-through holes just like on the R1, a new narrower rider seat, a new aluminum fuel tank, and the new instrument panel. So here you can see in the crankcase the addition of the gear position sensor. It's added on the right side of the upper crankcase. The ACM, the volume has been reduced in order to save weight, and this is largely due to the fact that we don't need as much power because everything is now LED. And reduced weight means a faster revving engine. There's a new ECU to deal with all your traction control, your D modes, and your available quick shift. And this gives you a quick reference for where all the pinouts are on ECU if you have to do any diagnostic work. And here is your instrument panel. Again, everything, this bike meets those EU4 regulations, so you won't get any error codes up on the dash, just the signals. And it does have also the data logging and GPS symbols, which is available for the CCU, which you can buy as an accessory. That is largely it.
So what else we have? That's it. Thank you, Andrew. That was very good. Dave, do we have any questions from our technicians, our participants?
Yeah, guys, there's been a couple of guys that have been a little confused, I guess, with the step up power level from the D mode to the standard, and then 40 and 40. Keep in mind, everyone, that this is based off of the R1 and has basic groups the R1 CCU. And because it has the R1 CCU basic groups, it must have a step-up pressure to power level as the R1 did. So that's why it has, though it only has 3 levels, like other models around, it has that change in the way the system functions from standard being a mid-level and then having a low level and a level to follow. So would it be nice to have that one exactly the same? Yeah, I agree, but we are at what we've got. That's been the biggest issue.
Thank you, Dave. Do we have any other questions that our technicians would like to answer? So this puts an end. Thank you very much, Andrew, for bringing this 2017 Motorcycle Technical Update webinar to fruition. Thank you very much to all the dealers for participating in our live webinar. And to qualify for your dealer status, those dealers will have to answer 7 out of the 10 questions that we are going to give you correctly. And there you go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, very much.